Good morning, guys. I hope everyone is having a lovely start to Tuesday, or depending on where you are in the world, Monday night. I just wanted to jump in here, say hello, and just share, I guess, a few insights I have around body shame and stuff that's been coming up lately that I've observed in others, but also my own experiences around body shame. And I think this is a really, really big topic. Like, this is huge, and it needs to be talked about. It's the elephant in the room. I find when people are wanting to work on their own health, because where you come from, the place that you come from with how you're trying to change your health, is it from a place of shame or is it from a place of self-love? Makes a huge difference. It's a totally different intention, and it's a totally different outcome. If you're there, say hello, because I can't see because I'm doing this on Chrome. But it's a totally different outcome on how you go about it. And I had a client say to me the other day, she was like, this is the first time ever in my life that I'm actually showing up and improving my health from a place of pure self-love, like really just being like, I just want to nourish my temple. I just want to be the best version of me because I know I'm worthy of that, rather than coming from a place of, when I lose the weight, when I clear the skin, when I, fit into that dress, when I'm more toned, when I don't have the cellulite, insert when I will then be lovable. Then I'll be good enough. Then I'll be worthy. And it might not be a conscious thought pattern for you, but those two different, intentions of where you're coming from and why you're doing it, like going into the gym and slogging yourself because you don't feel good enough and you have to beat your body into a certain way to then feel love is a very different intention to, I want to move my body because I just want to feel good. And my body needs to move to function better, and my brain needs to move, my body needs to move so my brain will function better, and so I can show up as the best version of me because I am worth it. Very, very different. Prioritizing yourself as number one, knowing that you are your most important asset, knowing that you need to fill up your own cup first and foremost before you can then go and give your gifts to your family, your loved ones, to the world, to whatever it is that you're working on, whether that just be, there's no more important thing regardless of what you're doing in the world, to show up for yourself. And we all have shame. We all have shame. All of us, every single one. We're a human being. And, looking at these, the way where shame has come from, and shame can often be in the driver's seat, and we're constantly running from it because we're not willing to shine the spotlight on it and not willing to really go and move into it and actually acknowledge it. And it wants to be acknowledged just as any other part of us. And when we're constantly running, like we're constantly on high alert, fight or flight, that's what it puts us into. And the way that we're then running our lives is as a result of us running from that shame, hoping that no one will find out, hoping that no one will cotton on to the fact that we're a fraud, or that we're a fake, or that we're actually not as good enough, or we're not smart enough, or we're actually not as what we're trying so hard for the world to perceive us as, and we're just hoping that they won't find out, right? So, the way that this can show up in the way that we view ourselves is the way that we talk to our body, the way that, like I just said before, the way that we show up with exercise and self-care and looking after ourselves, that way we show up in our relationships. And this also includes body shame in terms of sex, in terms of the way our parents talk to us about our bodies, talk to us about our sex organs, talks to us about reproduction. All of those things can really have a massive effect, particularly for women, but I also think for men too. I think men don't talk about it as much. I think women are starting to talk about it a lot more. But like the shame around our way our bodies look like, the way they look, comparing that to, this culture of perfectionism, social media, pornography, all this like perfection, unrealistic, playing the comparison game and going, well, I'm not like that, so I'm not, therefore I'm not worthy. And it shows up in our relationship when we put masks up. And how, I guess the question is, to ask yourself is, how was your body spoken about when you were a kid? Did your parents use the correct body terms? Or did they use different body terms for like penis, vagina? Did your mum talk, how did your mum talk about your body in front of you? How did she talk about her own body? How was nudity handled? How was sex explained? All of those things. And, there's so much shame around that. And it can have such a massive effect on us. How did your mum and your dad and your primary caregivers, because not everyone had both parents or had parents that were together or separated or, had other primary caregivers, how did they show up and look after themselves? And often they have shame that they're carrying around, and it gets passed on. This is how intergenerational trauma gets passed down, generation to generation, from ourselves, because this shame gets stored in our cells, and it stays there, and it needs to at some point come out, and it needs to be acknowledged. And so getting honest with yourself, like, where am I playing the comparison game? How am I talking to myself when I look in the mirror? How am I talking to myself when I'm going and exercising or when I'm not exercising? Looking at others and saying, oh, I'm not like them, so I shouldn't bother, or I need to be like them, but I'm never going to get there because I'm always like playing a comparison game. And how is this really affecting you with the patterns and the habits that you've formed for yourself? Because if you don't feel worthy, are you then just causing self-destruction? And if you don't feel worthy and you're not showing up for yourself, or using that as an excuse, and I just think it all comes down to us not feeling worthy of love ultimately. But I actually did this exercise recently where I had to list the thing that I was so scared about people finding out, like the thing I'm desperately trying to convince people I am, and want the way I want people to see me. So I want people to see me as smart, as a leader, as beautiful, as funny, all those things. And I had to go and hard worker, humble, and I had to go and list those, and then write the opposite. And the opposite was like, I'm a stupid, ugly, lazy, arrogant asshole. And I'm doing everything in my power for people not to think that of me. And the way that has driven things through my life, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's not true. I was telling a friend, she's like, that's not true. And it's like, no, but that's my darkness. And so understanding that we've all got this darkness inside of us that thinks about this and where it's come from, and often has come from, when we were a kid, when we weren't given our needs weren't met. And then, we gave it meaning that we weren't worthy and we weren't lovable. And, it can be trauma with a little t and trauma with a big T, things that happen to people, but it's just when our needs weren't met. And then acknowledging that part of me that I don't, the part of me that doesn't want to be seen as stupid and lazy and ugly, and actually I turned it into a character and visualized that character and actually totally fully acknowledged that character. And, I can see now how much this has showed up in my life because I've been ignoring it. And the more what you resist persists. And the more I pushed the shame down, the more the shame came back, and the way that it drove me and that need for approval through my whole life, particularly my 20s, of the way I made decisions and the way I've gone and done things and the way I've let boundaries drop and not prioritize myself first. And it manifested out my skin, it manifested out my kidney as a kidney tumor. It resulted me in staying in a relationship because I felt too scared to leave because I didn't feel worthy enough. And I gave my power away. And it takes constant work, but I think what I really want to encourage you today is, if you're watching this, is like, just start to get really honest with yourself. Where's the shame? Like, what's the part that you're not acknowledging? And so then, really getting it and feeling, going into that gritty darkness, like, ugh, it doesn't feel good. But then it makes total sense that it's okay to feel this way. It's safe to feel this way. It makes sense that you feel this way, and just acknowledging that part of you, because that is much of a part of you as the rays of sunshine. And we just want the rays of sunshine without acknowledging the darkness. And when we don't acknowledge that darkness, that's when we get resistance. And so the way then that this, without acknowledging it, then it shows up with the way it plays out with our health, is not prioritizing ourselves, prioritizing everyone else besides our own self-care, potentially eating, like emotional eating, destructive eating, binge eating, doing something like to sabotage your own progress, and then being like, see, I told you you weren't worthy enough. And that happens a lot as well. And so actually acknowledging, those parts of you, and being like, it's okay, you're completely safe and okay and acceptable as you are. And it sounds counterintuitive, but as soon as I started doing this, I was like, oh my God, I actually got relief, and was like, it's okay to be that way. Because all of this, what this does is it creates stress and cortisol in the body, and then we're in fight or flight. And stress is one of the big drivers of any type of health condition. Inflammation is one of the big drivers of any health condition. And this is why I'm so passionate about really allowing people to understand that if we don't address the emotional drivers and our feelings of unworthiness, we're never going to get to the root cause of what our health conditions are, because there's always this underlying emotional stress that's happening, low grade inflammation that's always there. It's like the little elephant in the room that no one's acknowledging. And we have to go and turn and look at it and acknowledge it. And it doesn't go away, but it's changing your relationship with it and actually learning to acknowledge it and give it the credit that it needs, because that shame also has created amazing things in my life. I've been driven. I've, really wanted to make an impact. I've been doing, there's all these things, and it actually does serve a purpose as healthy shame. And I have to acknowledge that part, because if it wasn't for that part in me, there's certain things in my life that I wouldn't have achieved. I wouldn't have become the person I'm becoming. I'm becoming the path I'm on, all of that. So it needs to be acknowledged. And changing that relationship with it, and that's it. And then start to be like, well, becoming consciousness about when you're walking around throughout the day, what you're saying to yourself, the stories that you're saying to yourself. When you look in the mirror, what are you saying to yourself when you're naked, looking in the mirror? What are you saying to your body? Can you look yourself in the eyes and being like, it's okay, I totally accept you the way that you are. Can you even look yourself in the eyes and say, I love you? And that's really uncomfortable. That's a good old, like, I remember reading about that in one of Louise Hay's books, which is like something I read like years ago. And I was just like, whoa, that is real woo-woo and hard, like crazy. But it is really hard to do. And when you start to do it, there's a bit of fake it till you make it. But starting to becoming conscious of how you're talking to your body, use the language that you're using around your body, and all of that goes with it. So hopefully you found that insightful. It may have triggered the shit out of you. It may have not. You may realize, like, I've had some ahas. I'd love to hear in the comments if you are watching this on replay. Please share it. Like, please ask questions. Share what insights you've had. Because if you've had an insight or a aha, it will also help other people to perhaps share if they didn't have the confidence to share as well. So I hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll chat soon. Bye.